Good afternoon and welcome to our Monday, May 9th, 2022 regular council meeting. I'll call the meeting to order at 5 p.m. As part of your agenda package, we have item 2.1, acceptance of the agenda. I'm going to have one addition under 4.4 under business arising from the minutes regarding the Do Crew National Award. Council Chapman will be speaking to that. Is there any further additions to the agenda? Seeing none, could I get someone to make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Councillor Reese, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Again, as part of your council package, we had a copy of the regular council meetings from April 25th, 2022. Were there any errors or omissions in the minutes? Seeing none, could I get someone to make a motion to adopt the minutes? Councillor Pickering, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And we're going to jump ahead to item 5.1, delegation by appointment. We have a guest speaker this evening, Melanie Harthoorn, that's going to be giving us a PowerPoint presentation. Mel, if you want to come join us at the table here, please. And just for the public record, before you start, could I get you to state your name and your address, please?
Melanie Harthoorn, 1217.
You just have to turn your microphone on, sorry, and pull it a little bit closer.
Melanie Harthoorn, 1217 22nd Avenue here in Coaldale.
Well, welcome, Mel. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Mayor and Ryan, thank you for this opportunity. I am here today as a resident of Coaldale and not in any sort of official capacity. I was informed today that that was not allowed. So, I would like to address some specific concerns that I have with the Coaldale Hospital. I would just like to clarify, I do not have concerns with the care provided at the hospital because the staff go above and beyond to provide great patient care. Today we also received a new manager and I'm confident she will be an excellent administrator. It is the building itself that has me concerned. I'd love to start with a bit of background history, especially for us younger folk. In the early days of Coaldale, many of the Mennonites who settled here identified with the need for medical care in our community. They initiated healthcare services and were the catalyst in raising money to build 4 hospitals over the years.
Jason, can you turn one of the lights off, please?
Okay. So as you can see on the pictures here, this is the first hospital. You see the Greer's Hardware, that was the first hospital. You got the second one, the third one, and the fourth one is what exists today. This book, Coaldale Hospital Memoirs, is a treasure. It outlines the incredible commitment and contributions that were made throughout the years in caring for the needs of our community. These hospitals were built through dedication, volunteerism, collaboration, and donations of land, services, and labor. If you look through this book, you will see countless pictures of familiar faces and names, some of who are still working in the hospital. Much of the current facility has been a direct result of community support. The chapel, the therapeutic gardens, the handy bus, the solarium, the purchase of countless medical items, plus programs, in addition to the handy bus, the candy stripers. This was all community-based support for the hospital. And you can see there's you can see a picture of Jack and Ryan on the bottom, the younger Jack. A lot of donations and community programs. This all started to change when in 1995, the provincial government changed the role of many rural hospitals by closing the acute and active treatment facilities. Coaldale residents did not want this and initiated a Save RER campaign, wherein the community came together, wrote letters, held rallies, and advocated to MLAs. However, after a long, hard fight, we were only left with 2 of what are now considered urgent care beds. These were closed during COVID and have yet to be reopened. That's the wrong way. There we go. In 2004, again, much to the chagrin of Coaldale residents, the operations of Coaldale Health Centre were transferred to the Chinook Health Region, who took control from the Coaldale Hospital Association, which had faithfully served for over 70 years. In 2008, care was further centralized when the Chinook Health Region was dissolved and operations were transferred to Alberta Health Services. While there may be benefits to the centralization and standardization of care, these moves have resulted in a chronic underfunding of rural hospitals. Additionally, as Town Council noted at that time, our strong community ties to the hospital were severed. Local identity with the hospital started to diminish to the point where we are no longer even aware of the needs in the hospital. Well, I am here to raise awareness about the needs in the hopes that our community can once again rally together for our hospital and its residents. The building is falling into disrepair. For example, the roof has been leaking into the facility for years. Last summer, it was leaking into the dining room of one of the wings, necessitating tarps and buckets to divert and catch the water. 1 month ago, it was leaking into one of the residents' rooms, again necessitating tarps and buckets so it wouldn't drip directly onto her bed. Today, again, into a resident's room. This has been an ongoing problem for years, and while a roof repair was approved by AHS because of various reasons such as COVID and increased prices and supply issue and re-tendering, etc., it has not yet been fixed. Mayor Ben Ryan, maybe this is outside of anyone's control, but I find this very sad. If this were to occur in any other institution, it would be fixed very quickly. If this were still our hospital, I am convinced it would be fixed by now. And it's not just the roof. The building was never designed to be a long-term care center. Oh, I forgot I had a video too. I have a little play. If not, that's okay. The building was never designed to be a long-term care center. Our elderly residents are forced to share rooms in their forever home. My kids have to share a room. I don't think our grandparents should have to. The bathrooms aren't accessible, and some have to resort to bedside commodes. Some of the rooms have been retrofitted with ceiling lifts, but it's not ideal. The rooms are small, often difficult to navigate with wheelchairs or walkers, and because of that disconnect with the community, there is little to no volunteerism. The chapel is now mostly quiet. The building is slowly but surely deteriorating. My final concern is with the actual number of long-term care beds in Coaldale. Many of our residents, including my grandmother, are forced to reside away from our community, away from their family, because of a lack of capacity. The provincial government has thankfully committed to expanding capacity in continuing care and has earmarked $500 million to create more long-term care spaces for Alberta's senior population. It promised to upgrade existing spaces while also creating new ones, with the goal of eliminating shared rooms and providing space for the long list of Albertans waiting for a long-term care bed. Mayor Ben Ryan, I urge Town Council to please advocate to the AHS and provincial government about the need in our community and request that some of those funds please be directed to our town. The demand for continuing care is projected to increase 62% by 2030. That's not that far away. If the residents of our town are already being forced to live in an outdated facility or in another community altogether, we need to act quickly to ensure that they have the opportunity to stay safely in the community that they love. Some of the individuals named in this book now reside in the healthcare center. They worked hard to provide Coaldale residents with quality health care. Now it's our turn to care for them. We may not be able to return the hospital to its former glory, but we can start by advocating at least for a new roof. I believe that between AHS, Town Council, our provincial government, and the community at large, together we can collaborate and care for some of our most vulnerable.
Thank you, Mel. So, quick question for just Stacy there. So, what have you heard as far as the pre-COVID where they closed the 2 acute care beds? Have you heard anything about when they're supposed to be coming back?
I have not. No. And again, we did just receive a new manager today. We have been without for quite a while. We had an interim manager, but she, I think, would be very willing to present and meet with council in an official capacity. But as far as I know, they're not slated to be reopened anytime soon, if at all.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up the floor for questions to Mel or any from council. So we're going to be meeting with our MLA grant hunter next Monday evening on the 16th of May. So if you could do me a favor, you've written council a letter with many of your concerns. Could you do me a favor and send me an email with 3 or 4 main points you want us to get across? And then I'll share those with council, and then we'll bring that up at our meeting. And then we'll see what kind of progress we can make moving forward from that meeting.
Great. I appreciate this, and I appreciate the time. And if there's anything that I can do personally to advance healthcare in our community, I'm more than willing.
And then we'll work with our administration team to do a letter regarding the demise of the structurally sound or lack of in the building itself. So, Councillor Chapman had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Van Ryan, and through to Melanie. I just wanted to concur with our mayor in terms of our advocacy, and I want to thank you as well, because these are the kinds of steps that gets action, and I think that taking the steps that you have, and then we can follow that up with our MLA and up the ladder. I think that this is something I've even spoken with our provincial minister of health, Jason Copping, and so he's aware of our need here in Coaldale. And I think the other component to healthcare obviously is our EMS situation, and so both those issues are high priority with all of us here on council. And so with your advocacy, I want to thank you as well, Melanie.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really too bad, especially going through this book and seeing the hard work and dedication that this community put forth for healthcare, and just to see it slowly deteriorate. It makes me very sad.
Okay, Councillor Beekman.
Thank you, Mayor. Melanie, first off, thank you for your presentation. I was speaking with my family doctor a few weeks ago. And is it true that everybody's just kind of still up in the air on urgent care? And the reason I ask is I talked with him about it, and he said that everybody who's involved or was involved with urgent care pre-COVID, that they're asking, and nobody's getting them answers. Is that kind of the sense you're getting on that too?
That's the sense I'm getting as well. Also in communication with some local physicians, they don't know. They would like to see it open. One physician in particular, the nurses would like to see it open. The residents of Coaldale would like to see it open. I'm not sure why it's not yet open. I feel like it can be done in a safe manner to still protect the residents of the Coaldale Health Center. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's still closed.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more questions, so thank you once again. Excellent job. And then if I could ask Lana, our municipal clerk, if you could share the PowerPoint that Mel sent with the photos and the video. And if you could send that to our MLA as a subject matter for our meeting next Monday as well. Okay. Thanks, Mel. Okay, moving on to agenda item 4.1, we have our municipal engineer, Dustin Yanke. He's going to be giving us an update on the Civic Square outdoor space project. Welcome, Dustin. When you're settled in, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. I'll be providing an update on the Civic Square outdoor space project and looking for direction from council with respect to next steps taken by administration. So for those that are unaware, the Civic Square outdoor space project is proposed phase 3. You can see on the right side here, the figure is the green area. The red area is the Civic Square building. The purple area is the phase 2 commercial, which is a part of the agreement with the developer Shift Real Estate Investments. The green area, the Civic Square outdoor space project, includes the development of the The outdoor space, which is the vacant land between the public library and the new Civic Square building, consists of a public parking lot, which is a requirement for the Civic Square building. It was originally intended to be a multi-use outdoor festival space. And what exactly that looks like and how multi-use it will be and for what seasons has not yet been determined. We recently received favorable news on our application to the Canada Community Revitalization Fund, in which the federal government has allocated $750,000 towards this project. One of their requirements within the grant agreement is that the town will fund a minimum of 25% of the overall project cost. So for us to receive the full $750,000, we would be on the hook for $250,000 of a $1 million budget. There are also some stipulations within the scope, or within the grant agreement that relate to the scope of the project, which we will touch on later. Additionally, Shift Real Estate, as part of the Civic Square building agreement, has donated $75,000 towards this project. That project itself, the building, is scheduled for completion as of right now for September 2022. Currently working with Fortis to bury the overhead power communication lines. You can see in the photo here, that's the existing site. So there's a bit of work to be done ahead of time to get the site ready for development. We've also recently applied for a grant through the Municipal Climate Change Action Center for electric car chargers at this site. Lastly, right now we're just working on finalizing the conceptual design of the space to ensure that we can accommodate all desirable programming opportunities without having to perform any rework in the future. Just some update photos. You can see, if you haven't drove by lately, they put some brick on the fascia of the building. Just give you a feel of where the building's at right now. Here's a photo from across the street. So for the outdoor space, the current scope, it's largely dictated by the federal grant agreement. So part of the intent with the agreement, or with the intent with the grant, is to promote gathering spaces within communities and revitalize areas of communities. So we'd be looking at developing a parking lot, and this is also one of our land use bylaw requirements. We'd be looking at about 40 to 42 parking stalls. This would serve the Civic Square building as well as the Phase 2 commercial development to the west. Part of the scope also would be accommodating a large concrete pad, whether that's concrete or paving stones, some sort of hardscaping to accommodate public gatherings, which would serve for various programming opportunities. We need landscaping, benches, gas fire pits, as well as site lighting. The question we have for council is how can we maximize the success of this project? Based on the funding that we've received from the federal government, we want to do our due diligence early to ensure that we're turning over all potential stones to make sure that we are maximizing the success to its full capacity of the project. As a potential focal point in Coaldale's downtown, the Civic Square outdoor space represents a significant opportunity to bring people to Coaldale's newly revitalized Main Street to interact with local businesses. To maximize this potential draw of people to our downtown, it's critical to try and incorporate as much programming as possible. This includes variety, as well as planning for programming year-round. There are many easy wins for programming during the summer months that can be incorporated with the concrete pad on site. Some examples that we just brainstormed internally are Coaldale Summerfest, farmers markets, food trucks, concerts, movie nights, festivals, beer gardens, show and shine, and miscellaneous sports. The question that came to us was how can we make this space have purpose in the winter months as well? With the concrete pad, the opportunity exists to install a chiller system that would accommodate an ice skating surface in temperatures upwards of 10 degrees Celsius. At a minimum, this would include placing chiller lines into the concrete slab while it's being poured and roughing in the infrastructure for an eventual HVAC chiller unit. This would permit approximately 4 to 5 months, depending on weather, of additional programming opportunity each year as we relieve some of the pressure, or as well as relieve some of the pressure for ice time on Coaldale's indoor arena. So depending on the intent of this skating surface, the opportunity exists to take some of the recreational programming away from the indoor arena so that it can accommodate hockey more times during the day. Approximate cost implications to accommodate a chiller system into a concrete pad are roughly $350,000, just to give council an idea. And the commitment, if we were to rough in the lines into the concrete, so basically a concrete pad versus a concrete pad with the chiller lines, is approximately $75,000. This is just a site layout that we prepared internally showing the core features that are required within the grant funding. Council might also be familiar with a previous drawing that showed 2 parking lots with one on each side of the skating rink. So this is our final rendition that we came to. So upon further analysis, we ultimately determined that it's more feasible to have 1 parking lot close to the Civic Square building as shown here. It's largely due to existing alleys that have shallow utilities that would have to be relocated if we were to put a skating rink up above them. As well, it's more efficient from a stormwater management perspective due to constraints with surrounding infrastructure. An item worth noting with the site is that there are a handful of mature trees that will be impacted. The town's arborist has conducted a condition assessment of the trees, and it was ultimately determined that they are in poor health and not worth trying to design the site around. Lastly, just to note, the size of the ice in this figure is approximately 70% of a regulation NHL size skating rink. And just for reference, if anyone's familiar with the Tabor indoor smaller skating rink, that's pretty much equivalent to the same size. So we use this conceptual layout with our friends here from FWBA, came up with some renderings to give council a bit more of a visual feel on what the space could feel like. I just want to note that the design is very preliminary, so the specifics of furnishings and where they are not quite determined yet. It's very conceptual in nature. So this is a plan view drawing showing so Main Street would be running on the left side up and down. 19th Street runs, 20th Ave Main Street is on the left side, 19th Street is on the bottom, and then Civic Square is in the top left corner. So I'll go through all the photos, and then if council has any specific questions or would like to see any of them again, we can always go back and discuss. So this is facing from close to the southwest corner of the Civic Square building. We'd be looking towards the southwest, so you can see where the skating area would be. This is in the summer, obviously, so potential opportunity on the concrete sites for all the different events I mentioned prior. Another thing to note with what we've shown doesn't have hockey boards, so if we did want to accommodate hockey to any extent, it would likely be prudent to install dasher boards and glass, potentially netting. So part of the design is really indicative on how or to what extent we want to accommodate hockey if we are pursuing a nice skating surface. This is in the winter months, some snow, just to give you an idea. So these would be the gas fire pits central to the parking lot and concrete surface. In this one, you'll note there's a roof canopy structure. Some of the pros about incorporating a roof over the surface is that there would be less maintenance. So there is a larger capital upfront cost for the roof. Ultimately, it would reduce maintenance, less debris falling onto the surface. There would be lower operating costs for the ice itself. When you're blocking the sun, it requires less electricity to produce the ice. You're not as much at the mercy of weather, so you increase your programming opportunity potential. There's less risk of having to cancel certain programming events. That's just another photo of the roof in the summer. next steps, we're looking at moving into detailed design to maintain targets that are laid out in our grant agreement. So from this, we would be looking at knowing from council whether the outdoor skating rink is something that they would like to pursue, whether that be now or in a future phase. We would need general or approval on the general layout of the site, particularly with respect to the parking lot and the rink being on one side versus the original plan, just to ensure that we're not looking at relocating shallow utilities. So if we were to try to do that at a later phase, that could impact construction schedule and ultimately costs. Another thing we're looking for approval on is accepting the grant agreement condition that the town will fund a minimum of 25% of the overall project costs. So we're not asking for approval on a specific dollar per se. We'll come back at a later date once we get further with detailed design, and then probably in November for next budget season, we could recommend how much money it will be and where that money could come from to give council an ultimate decision. Furthermore, we'd be looking at doing potentially some public engagement. Administration would recommend asking two key items that we see right now are what programming opportunities are a priority, mostly in relation to the summer events. If there are any additional easy wins, maybe we want to include pickleball courts or just additional questions to make sure that we are looking at all the stones and if there's additional costs, to what extent do we want to go down that avenue. As well, with relation to a skating surface, if that's something council wants to commit to, what extent does it accommodate hockey? And that goes back to my points about whether there's hockey boards, is there glass, is there benches, is there change rooms? Those are questions we'd be looking for direction on. In the council report, you'll see the decisions laid out. Option one that we would recommend at this time is that council directs administration to proceed with detailed civil design of the Civic Square outdoor space, and for this design to include the requisite rough-ins for an outdoor skating rink, with the intent of installing the HVAC chiller unit in a future phase or at a time as directed by council. Further, that council direct administration to host public engagement activities for the purpose of determining what programming opportunities are a priority within the space, and further approve the town's requirement to fund a minimum 25% of the total project cost of $250,000 to maximize the funding received through the Canada Community Revitalization Grant. Finally, the administration bring back to council additional information on what an ice chiller system will cost in detail as part of the 2023 capital budget deliberations in November of 2022. So option two would be similar steps in proceeding with detailed design, but not pursuing the requisite rough-ins for a future ice plant. And lastly, the third option would be investigating alternative design options altogether. And that's the final of my presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Dustin. Can you go back to slide 13 that shows the site plan, please?
So, 13.
On our PowerPoint, it's slide 13, the site plan, that one there, yes. So the intent of your option one motion then is to do the detailed design on the parking lot and the 70% sized rink as shown on here, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. And then also my question is then, as part of your detailed design, would you rough in for a future canopy then as well, like get costs back on that as well, so that we could at least rough in for those?
Yes, we would. Yeah, we would get costs and manage the design if that is something the council is interested, to ensure that we wouldn't be pigeonholing ourselves with the design.
Right. Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to Council Deputy Mayor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. A couple questions. First one, with the canopy, is there grants that we can get federally to put solar panels on? So we're going to put some type of a roof on it, put solar on it, and then the solar runs the ice plant, puts power back into the grid system, so we can apply for money, not have higher utilities, and then put some power back into the grid system.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Avery. I am aware that there are definitely grants out there. I don't have details on the specifics, I'm not overly familiar, but that is something we can look into and come back with further information.
Okay. And then the second question on the motion, I'm just curious why it says minimum of 25%. I think the motion could read up to, or 25% up to $250,000, so we don't overspend over that 750 plus the 250, which gives us the $1 million for our project. Because if we say minimum of, then I feel it gives us the opportunity, or administration the opportunity to go over without coming back to council.
Go ahead, Kalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Deputy Mayor Avery. Point taken, that was language given to us by the federal government. That was their way of saying that we're welcome to spend more than the $750, but they're not gonna give us 25-cent dollars if we go above their maximum share of $750. So it's no concern to amend the resolution so that we know it's up to $250 before coming back to council. But that was language taken from the federal government as their way of advising us that they're going to give us no more than $750, even though we're welcome to spend more than that if council so desires.
Are you satisfied then, Deputy Mayor? Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Saylor?
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. If we were to put a canopy on it, would it prolong the use of the ice surface? Would it be longer than that 4 to 5 months? Would we get a little extra use out of it with the canopy?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Saylor, yes, it would. Talking to the supplier, they say 10 degrees Celsius without a roof. They say with a roof you can go, they've had it upwards of 15 degrees Celsius. So it really depends on the wind and number factor, but it definitely would prolong the length of the ice season.
Any further questions, Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Van Ryn, and through to Dustin. I appreciate all the work that's going into this. And with regards to option number 1, which I'm leaning towards and in favor of, the final sentence, you're asking that administration bring back to council additional information about what an ice chiller system will cost. Do we not have a fair idea outside of the $350,000 what the ice chiller will be?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, we have rough budget numbers from the supplier. I think the intent is to agree in principle that we will rough in the infrastructure and then bring back the full picture with detailed pricing on how it impacts the project itself. Because the costing that we have from the supplier might not take into consideration some of the constraints with the site itself and the other parts of the design. So there might be additional implications, and it's a little bit early to say for sure that it is 350. So we're just leaving it open to extend it for additional certainty.
Okay, thank you. And so the final part of that sentence about the capital budget deliberations, then the full capital project will be brought forward to council for deliberation then, and then the chiller will be a part of that capital process.
That's correct, yeah.
And then, Dustin, one more question. For the dasher boards, is that a decision that we have to give you tonight, or is that something as part of your design that you'll come back with for cost options on that?
Yeah, we don't need a decision on that tonight. We'll come back with cost options. So based on the engagement, we'll have a better picture on the direction and the feel of the space, and then from there we can come up with options on, I guess, really how much council wants to invest. Because like we say 250, but if you want to put a roof on the structure, it's going to be a lot more. So all of those additional add-ons will be items for council to decide on at a later date.
And then as far as the timeline for the public engagement portion, what are you thinking for that?
We haven't spoken detail on dates, but we're intending on early this summer, probably in the next 2 to 3 months. We spoke somewhat internally on it. It'd likely be in the form of an online survey with the opportunity of having maybe one open house event.
Okay, and then with the summer coming up with July, August, that's probably not a good time to be doing public engagements, and maybe sometime in the fall then when school's back in, would that give us enough time to get everything ready for budget then?
Potentially, it would definitely put a little more pressure on. The earlier we can do it, the better.
Okay,
But I mean, depending on how many of the details we can sort out before, it'll ultimately just make it easier for us.
okay, thank you. Last chance for questions for Dustin? Seeing none, could I get someone to consider one of the motion options, please? Councillor Beekman?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to read it out, but I'll make a motion that council approve option 1.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Dustin. Very good job. Moving on to item 4.2, the clay berm between the joint high school and the rec center, and the Phase 2A Malloy drainage pond. We have Clive. Clive, I'm just going to get you to take your seat again. We're just going to have another presentation first.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's fine. So this evening we have from FWBA Architects, we have Jesse Potrie and Dan Westwood. If you two gentlemen want to take a seat, and when you get settled in, you have a presentation for council to see.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Jack Ryan. We had we sent through earlier today some material to I think Lana, you have it right ready. So first, before we run through, we prepared a video and some visuals to give a perspective on what it looks like with and without the berm. We just wanted to run through kind of the history of the project and how we kind of ended up at this location right next to the berm, and why we're kind of in this situation to begin with. So, Lana, do you have that PDF that I sent you before?
Do you want berm, no berm?
No, I sent you an email just with a plan, a site plan, just so we could look at the overall site. So originally the school was actually not located next to the berm. And during conceptual planning, before the school was being funded, it was located to the south of the future 16th Avenue. There was, of course, no obstructions, no berms immediately adjacent to the school. There we go, yeah. So that's currently where it is right now. And so it was located south of the 16th Avenue extension, near
that laser
to the
point
south east, a little stormwater area. And through the course of design, we looked at a number of options. Part of the reason we ended up pushing the school northwards was because we wanted a strong connection between the so this was the original location of the school when we were going through preliminary design. When we looked at locating the field, this future football field, the optimal position of that is to be running north-south, because then you can easily watch the game without having the sun in your eyes, and neither team has the sun in their eyes when they're playing. So the orientation of this field really needed to be north-south in order to have a good surface to play at. And having the school down here and this alignment already set with the stormwater, it meant that the field had to be somewhere kind of a little bit remote from the school if we used this location. So that's why the decision was made during design to actually push the school. Of course, none of this land has a defined use yet. But we know that the town, of course, owns this land and wants to eventually develop it into further subdivisions. And so what we did is we actually worked with administration to try and push the school into this location so that it would maximize the amount of developable land available for the town, and of course, not be wasting space, right? So this location does have a connection between the field, of course, and the school. We did even look at options of pushing the school up here to open up some better views outwards because we knew this berm was here. However, because all the services and utilities are coming from this connection back towards the town, it was going to increase costs to the project. So it really made the most sense to actually push, cost-wise, to actually push the school more towards the south of the area and not have it located on the north where the field is currently located. So that's kind of a bit of the history of why the school is located in this spot.
And maybe if I could just add, we understand how there is a concern now in that the walkway around the lake now is a very positive experience between the lake and the berm. And we also understand that I think that the berm is probably the second most important feature to this area other than the lake itself, the pond. And there's much too little green spaces. There is a park space within our communities, and certainly there's a lack of park space that have a water feature such as this pond. So I think the concern is legitimate. On the flip side of that, when we were given this site location in developing the central space for this joint venture between the school and the town, there was discussion that this community space would take advantage of the site to its maximum, and that included taking advantage of the views of the pond and to the birds of prey in the distance. And so it was decided at that time that the best way to do that would be to create a central gathering space that would have a view corridor between through the berm, and that the berm would be divided and relocated on the site to some degree. And we have some videos that just provided or put together that kind of show the existing situation and the proposed. But I should add, before we look at it, the optimum scenario for this project would be to have a cut and fill. You don't want to be taking dirt off the site and moving it elsewhere because of the additional cost. So although there is some screening that occurs now from the existing berm along the walkway, along the lake, that you would not see the school, you definitely see the school when you get to the northern portion of the walkway. If the cut from the or the view corridor is that soil is then taken to the north, you could extend the berm there and thereby screen the school, more on that end. And I think nothing's carved in stone, it's only carved in dirt right now. So there are some opportunities for altering the design. Perhaps the view corridor could be narrowed, and or like I said, the berm extended to the north, which would screen the school to the same amount. It just wouldn't be screened in one place, it'd be screened in two places. But I think it's pretty important for people to realize that this is a partnership between two entities, both the school district and the town. And so that if any changes are made, that the school district will certainly have to be part of that, even though this is not part of their property. They are a major player in this venture, and that this $50 million facility was designed around having this view. And so just to simply block it off now would be quite tragic in that the whole facility is designed to take advantage of this, and the design would have been completely different if it was simply cut off.
Yeah, we actually have some images on it. If you want to pull up the images, stills, showing what it looks like from, if you're standing in the learning commons. This is with the berm as it stands. So you would see just a hill of green or whatever the berm is made out of. So, and then if you pull up the second image, this shows what the view you have if the berm is carved out. You would be able to see through to the wetland. So it becomes a much more dynamic view in that sense instead of just a monotonous grass hill. Or I mean, I guess it could be planted with trees or something. I don't know if that's the end of the world, but so that's what it would look like from the school side, which I think is important to consider because we have a population of about 900 people who would be using the school on a day-to-day basis, teachers and students at maximum capacity. We'll be passing through this space, being able to take advantage of that view every day they're at school. Right? So, if you pull up the videos now, we did a video showing if you walk down the pathway, this is what it looks like with the school constructed and the berm in place as it is now. So you can see it does a good job of screening the school as you walk past it. But as soon as you get past the knoll up here, you'll notice that it's very visible. So I'm just following the trail of the existing path that's in place there right now.
So from the north end of the walkway, you'd certainly still see the school to a large extent.
Dan, if you can just move your microphone closer when you're speaking, please.
Same from the north end of the walkway, you'd certainly see the school to a major extent. And so you'll see in the next video, the school is much more visible as you walk through the newly created valley, but that cut could be used to fill in this northern portion that's exposed here.
So you can go back to the second video.
This video shows with the cut, but it does not have the extension of, or the soil is not added to the north side of the berm. This is just the case of it being removed. So there's still some screening that occurs from the knoll, and this is just the existing condition as we saw before from the north.
So that should give you a good idea of what the two options that are currently, I think, being discussed for that berm, whether to cut it or not. There are, of course, other options, as we discussed. You can cut it a little, or
add to the north.
There are, of course, also opportunities to make that valley essential kind of. So one thing we didn't mention was the back of the school is currently slated for a barbecue program, and the concession for the school is connected to that back patio that has the view where the library is, so that if you wanted to have some sort of game, let's say you had a football game and you wanted to have a barbecue back there, that would be an ideal location to try and bring people back to and have a gathering, right? So you'd be able to serve ice cream or whatever barbecue goods you wanted.
But it should be mentioned too that the central gathering space, which is a large space, it's the size of a small gymnasium that takes advantage of this view, is also seen as the living room for any kind of major event that is occurring within the rec center. So if there's a community event that's occurring in the rec center, the giant glass doors slide open. There's a direct connection to the gathering space, which would enjoy this view. But that this outdoor patio area that's sheltered from the wind, that has these amenities that the commercial kitchen has just spoke to, that is seen as a community space as well. And this is all part of the partnership and the synergies that we're trying to create here, both for the town and the school.
Thank you. Lana, could you put up that last video again and then stop it when we're the center of the corridor? If you know where that would be, I can tell you where to stop it. Or Jesse, you can let Lana know where to stop it, so when we're standing at the center of that cut.
Yeah, almost there. Yeah, right about here.
So the question I have with the amount of students that are going to be in that school. And we had 3 site visits there during the week, meeting with Ward Brothers to do a walkthrough on top of that berm. And when we were there on Friday, there had to be 60K winds. So how do you plan on mitigating the garbage that's going to be blowing from that school to keep it from getting into that storm pond or that wetland?
Oops, that's a train of thought. I think in reality, that's going to be an operational issue that the school will have to address. But I mean, in all fairness, I think the garbage would blow if there was a berm or not. I don't think the berm would catch garbage per se. So but I appreciate there's a real concern because students are where they are, and will they be careful enough with their litter if they're out there on a nice day having lunch, and what will be the result of it? Perhaps there should be some kind of fencing that can catch, I don't know, but we can certainly look at that on.
Like when we were doing the site visit, the natural grass that they have planted there now is like a foot tall. So I feel quite confident that that berm would catch a lot of that garbage. And my other question is that distance from the patio on the school where the V is going to be starting to the actual water edge, like that's over 300 plus feet away. And unless I don't understand when talking with Ward Brothers about the grade, that if someone's sitting on that patio, if you're even going to see that water surface, unless you're up on the second level of the rec center of the school, because it's such a long ways away that I don't understand how you think sitting on that patio that people are going to be able to see the water.
You can see 300 feet on a flat surface quite easily.
And I think part of it is the how full the water is, right? Like the high water line is much higher than I think the water is there. I think we are at a low point, I would say, in terms of the volume of water in there right now. So that will play also into the visibility of the water, right? So.
Okay, and then I'll open it up for questions from council. Council Beekman.
Thank you, Mayor. You had said during your presentation that the facility was designed around the view, or part of the facility design was designed around the view. Was the view, the partnership, the integration discussed with both parties, or was it an assumed view? Because from what I'm gauging is the birds of prey is not as receptive to it, and I'm just curious to know if that view and that partnership was mutually agreed upon.
Absolutely. The drawings were, this concept was presented right from the schematic level over, so it's been like a year and a half. And everyone signed off on every stage of it, and it was a directive for us to try to take advantage of view from both the town and the school board.
But what about the birds of prey?
The birds of prey were not brought into the discussion.
Okay.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, Dan and Jesse, I'll just have you take your seats, and then we have another Clive that wants to speak on the berm as well, so we give him an opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. I learned a few things. Appreciate it. My name is Clive Schaupmeyer, 2207 16th Avenue, Coaldale, Alberta. First of all, I'd like to thank the Mayor and Council for the invitation today to make a short presentation, 3 or 4 minutes. That's all it will be. And I'm going to read, excuse me, I should have put it on a PowerPoint. The town has received 2 requests for major alterations. There's a second one that wasn't addressed by the architects. We feel the berm currently protects the wetland from the school and rec center development. It's a visual screen, admittedly at the north end, not so much as we've seen in the videos, which were very cool. The first proposed alteration requested is a BB cut, and there's been a suitable presentation on that. You understand it. The wetlands, by the way, from that patio area, Mr. Mayor, are approximately 200 meters, and that's to the dry shore, not to where the water is at this moment. The second proposed alteration was removal of the south end of the berm to create a new water catchment basin to manage some of the water, and we understand perhaps provide fill to the grounds around the school. Myself, Birds of Prey, Collins and Edmonton can't be here today, Liz Allen and other people who I've spoken to, we ask that these requests be denied. I'm going to list just a few points. Both changes will have a detrimental environmental impact on the wetlands and wildlife, which are really sensitive to visual disturbances and to debris. The Centennial Wetlands Pathway is used. We understand the school's open 10-ish months a year, and we understand the people in the central hallway, I'm not sure what you call it, will be able to look out onto the possibly see the water. I'm not so sure about that. The Centennial Wetland Pathway, which is really a nice pathway, it's used basically 52 weeks a year by literally dozens and dozens of people every week. It's a very, very popular pathway. People drive to the Birds of Prey parking lot or to the Kinshelter parking lot simply to walk around those wetlands. They drive from Lethbridge and from the other side of town. So it's used extensively by walkers, and we're just asking that the impact of the school be lessened by keeping the berm where it is. As for the patio view or the view from the inside building, as we saw in the graphic, I think Palliser and the town would do well to install an irrigation system on the west side of the berm and landscape that. Have a landscape architect design a treed and landscape hillside, and that would be something attractive to look at, and frankly collect garbage, because we think there will be garbage, and it's going to be just about impossible to stop the Slurpee cups and things like that. So I think it would be a good use of that berm is to have it landscaped. It would require an irrigation system, because that west slope would be too dry and hot otherwise. We're most concerned that removing any part of the berm in the middle or the south end. The proposed south end disturbance would be to create a catchment basin, would increase the amount of garbage blowing over the wetlands that are used by no end of wildlife. The request for the new catchment basin is likely being made as a cost-saving measure. We're not sure, but apparently the south end of the berm would be used, the soil removed, proposed soil that would be removed would be used for fill and drainage to improve drainage elsewhere around the building. Excuse me. There are certainly other solutions to acquiring fill soil and providing better drainage to the area. This is specifically in regards to the catchment basement. We asked the town and Palliser look at other engineering alternatives, employing outside expertise for an impartial evaluation. Now, I want to say something here, but the architects didn't discuss the removal of the south part of the berm and creating a new catchment basin.
Clive, I'm just going to stop you there for a minute. Discussion point of this meeting is regarding the berm and that center cut. The catch basin is not on the table for discussion. So we're just talking about the berm and the center cut.
Well, they'll pretty well wrap it up then. We just think the proposal to alter the berm in any way, middle or south end or whatever, is counterproductive to the many, many environmental benefits that members of this council, previous council, Palliser have said, what a great idea to have these wetlands, and we feel removing the berm will take away from it. Accordingly, we ask the council follow through with its election pledges to listen to citizens and deny the two requests, in this case specifically the one request for alterations of the berm. And we'd encourage council to develop a long-term plan for the enhancement of future wetland expansion in the area in general. Thank you very much. We appreciate the invitation to be here today, and thank you for this opportunity. We look forward to positive support from the council. Thank you very much.
Okay, Clive, just before you get up, I'll just ask if there's anybody have any questions for Clive. Okay, Clive, thank you very much.
Appreciate interest, and thanks very much, and thanks for your presentation too. We're gonna leave, we have an appointment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll open it up to council for any comments. Councillor Reese?
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. After touring the site with members of council and representatives of Ward Brothers, I feel it's important to note that the existing berm should be left as it is, untouched, to protect the existing storm pond and wetlands from the new high school and rec center. Understanding that the berm was somewhat accidental with respect to the cost involved with removing the clay, it turned out to be a real benefit, especially given the dubious location of the center. To cut a V-shaped channel through the middle of the berm so that high school students and visitors to the multi-use rec center can view the water would be a disservice and a large disturbance to the upwards of 100 species of birds, mammals, and reptiles seeing the area on a regular basis. Not to mention the residents who utilize the pathways and enjoy the solitude of the area on a daily basis. Let's not forget that Coaldale is home to a nationally known wildlife sanctuary, also known as the Alberta Birds of Prey Foundation, whose mission is to preserve and protect wildlife and to educate the public. As town council, we should be striving to keep, if not all, as is the case right now, some of the nature that we still have, while also being mindful of future generations to protect the beauty and well-being of it. I would even go a step further by suggesting that we should add landscaping in the form of trees on the berm to further protect the wetlands and the wildlife from all the activity that the new joint high school and rec center are bound to bring. Also understanding that it will take years, at least 2 to 3 years, for the new trees to be stable on their own, meaning we would have to find a dependable and realistic way to have them routinely taken care of while they're stabilizing. As part of the decision options on agenda item 4.2, I'm disappointed that there is no option to leave the berm as is, undisturbed, and as a result, I would like to make the following motion before discussing the topic any further. That council halt any planned redesign of the existing berm, including any removal, except to allow for the installation of the storm pond required for the joint high school and rec center. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reese. There's a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I won't speak to the motion at the moment. I'd like to take that part over, but I'd like to direct my question to Director of Recreational Services, Russ Tanner, who's here tonight. And I know that you're going to have, probably of anybody in administration, the biggest impact or connection to the rec facility and other activities that are going to be taking place. My only real question to you, Russ, is this: with the berm, whether as it is or whether we form two hills, as could be proposed, whether that berm, and I'd like to thank Mayor Van Ryan for putting this tour together, because I had never stood on top of the berm, and it is fairly high. I was quite interested in that, and hills around our area of the province are very scarce, and youth today do look for winter activities as such, and even and whether this berm would serve as more of a little toboggan hill and used for other recreational activities outside of its purpose today.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan, and through the chair to Councillor Chapman. So just to clarify, the question is that will we make use of the berm? Regardless of what the decision is, certainly of council and the landscape in the end, if there are contours and things like that, contours especially here in Coaldale where there's the tobogganing hill that currently exists is somewhat of a small mass hill, but there's certainly ways for us to make use of a landscape like that. Whether it ends up being 2 berms or 1 berm, that could be the case, yes. There hasn't been to this point, there hasn't been a lot of thought go into it aside from landscaping and what the current plan is.
Yeah, thank you, Russ. I just realized from the long-term vision of development in that community that the school will be an attraction for a number of things, and of course summer and winter activities will be one. And so I just appreciate your answer and appreciate the tour that Mayor Van Ryn brought to us last week.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. Speaking in favor of Councilor Reese's motion, this is something we have to remember, as Clive pointed out. This is something that during the election, all of us, or some of us, said, don't worry about that berm. The berm was an accident, yes, but it's now there, and it is now aesthetically appeasing to those on the other side. Our residents that live here, are residents that live across on 16th. So this is a small win for them, and we need to show them that we stand behind what we campaign, or at least what I campaigned on. So speaking in favor of Councillor Reese's motion, I would vote in favor. Thank you.
Councillor Beekman.
A couple things here. First, I want to ask a question about the motion. Now, when you say, Councillor Reese, to motion or to halt all activity surrounding the berm, does that include the self-catch basin, or that's aside from the self-catch basin?
Thank you, Councillor Beekman, for your question. No, that was except for the removal of the installation of the storm pond.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
On that note, speaking in favor of the motion, from Councillor Reese, we can, if it's about a beautiful view, we can beautify the berm. We can beautify the berm with plenty of trees that also act as a garbage catch. I firmly believe we can't force an integration with the birds of prey. We can't force an integration where an integration is not welcome. Deputy Mayor Avery said that we agreed to listen to citizens, and there's been quite a few vocal on this matter, and I think we do need to listen. So I support that motion.
Councillor Pickering.
I too agree with Lisa on not disturbing that berm. The day Jack took me up to that site and we were there, the wind was blowing about 60 kilometers, and the water on that storm pond was dead calm. So it is a big asset for the wildlife there, and if we remove it, we're going to have a wide open, as normal in southern Alberta. Chinooks will roar through there, and the wildlife will move on. So I think it should be left. I too support the vote.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn, and maybe just more of a point of order that I think council in the past did look at all the angles as well. We invited all parties to come to the table to speak. So I wanted to ask Mr. Westwood, if possible, that with the berm being proposed to be kept as is, and whether it has to be redeveloped and compacted, and whether you'd be able to do some architectural work to try to encourage foliage and trees into that architectural design. I think I would certainly appreciate seeing that. The compaction that would need to occur on that berm would not be helpful for foliage of any kind, in my opinion. I think that they, there's because of the clay base and some of the mix that will go into it, that it might be more difficult. Clive, over the years, has been such a great inspiration in terms of building an interest in foliage and trees in our community, and pointed out to council many years ago how the trees around the birds of prey were in such a dire shape because they were not getting any water, because of the type of soil that those trees were planted in, that those trees were not surviving. So it was Mr. Schaupmeyer that was presenting to council a very clear direction in terms of what needs to take place in terms of protecting our trees and wildlife in our community.
So there was a question in there then?
It's my understanding that, as mentioned earlier, that the berm is really just the cut and fill from the lake or pond, and that already it's showing real signs of erosion, that it wasn't designed to be a landscape berm per se that would support tree growth. And so there would have to be some extensive landscaping in order to make that feature happen. But just to comment too on the windbreak, it's certainly providing a windbreak for the lake there now. But the school is a very large, and the rec center is a very large structure, and it will also provide that windbreak.
Thank you. So Councilor Reese, can I get you to read back your motion one more time, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. That council halt any planned redesign of the existing berm, including any removal, except to allow for the installation of the stormwater pond required for the joint high school and rec center.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Just a question to you, Mayor Van Ryan. So the question is that halt any work. So, for example, if the berm needs to have that top level cleaned off and compacted, so you don't have that crack occurring in there, then the motion would in all intent not allow any further redevelopment or reworking of that berm.
As part of the site meetings that were held, and I'm not sure when you and Councillor Pickering met with members of Ward Brothers, there was discussion at one of the other meetings that we had on site that from the new storm catch basin that they're going to be doing, they're going to be using that fill to top grade around the school. And then there would be some left that they could use to fix the fissures that are on the top side of that berm. And they could use that product to fix that up. CO Hastings.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question in terms of Palliser Schools, our project partner. I just wanted a little bit of clarity on Councillor Reese's proposed resolution, halt any planned. Would there be room for council to have a discussion with Palliser about this topic? I understand that halt any planned would put a pause on the current design, but to close the door on any further discussion on the berm without at least having a more formalized discussion with Palliser School Division, a key project partner who was part of the design around the existing landscape constraints. I have a little bit of concern about stakeholder partnership management, and although council is still able to put a pause, no further activity other than the stormwater pond and the civil design in and around the site, I do have a little bit of concern about how Palliser might receive a decision made by council without a more formal discussion with them on that, however it may end. But at least the process of having that discussion with them might be in council's best interest when looking at relationship management with the key project partner here.
Okay.
Just 1 second. Turn your mic on, Councillor Salem.
Thank you. Yeah, I would be in support with something like that as well, but I do believe that Kalen has a great point that we should at least consult with Palliser and not just close the door on them. I don't think that's really fair to do that to them without involving them whatsoever. So I feel like we have to have some sort of a meeting, kind of like option one, and have some sort of a workshop where we involve them and ourselves and the community kind of thing.
But if I'm understanding correctly, don't we own that land that we're discussing right now?
We do. Okay, any further discussion?
Would a tabling motion be?
Deputy Mayor Avery.
Thank you. I don't think this is halting until another plan comes in. The motion, or Councilor Reese spoke earlier about putting more trees up, beautifying it. So I think it's got to be, this is a motion not to cut this berm, and then administration can bring something back as a further design. That's the way I'm reading what Councilor Reese first said, and then she read her motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Avery. That's pretty much exactly what I'm after.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor of Councilor Reese's motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dan and Jesse. Moving on to item 4.3, the solid waste report follow-up. We have our Director of Operational Services, Justin MacPherson, presenting. Justin, when you're ready to go, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. Tonight I'm here to present Mayor Van Ryn said on some solid waste collection. In one of the last meetings, Council requested that I bring back a report on weekly versus bi-weekly garbage pickup. This matter has been discussed previously at Council prior to that March 14th, 2022 meeting. The same question was asked approximately 2 years ago on June 22nd, 2020. It was resolved that Council maintained the current solid waste pickup schedule. So that's just the history on it. We've been through solid waste 23 times with me and this council, so I'm going to move pretty quickly. If there's any questions, please stop me at any time. But currently our schedule sits at recycling weekly, garbage is bi-weekly, compost, March to November is weekly, and December to February is bi-weekly. So at the last meeting, one of the things that was recommended is maybe reducing that amount of compost in the winter. That is something we currently do. I wasn't sure if council meant reducing it more past that bi-weekly collection time. So I've added some statistics about our yearly totals. One thing to really note on the on this page here is this is when the town of Coaldale introduced their compost. You can see the garbage tonnage, and this is really the main story. Is the garbage tonnage a year went down significantly with that. The reason you want this is we are diverting compost from landfills, which is environmentally friendly, and cost. It is substantially cheaper to tip at the compost facility than it is in landfill. To move to the comparable data, industry standards a little bit all over the place, but larger communities are bi-weekly for the most part. There's some weekly communities left. I did actually have some troubles pulling some weekly communities, but looks like Medicine Hat, McGrath, Taylor, Raymond, and Nanton are still on the weekly garbage pickup schedules, while bi-weekly is a lot of the cities, Fort McLeod, Didsbury, Carstairs, Stony Plain, Sundre. I have some key considerations here. It is important to consider that currently Town of Coaldale is working with the 2.0 facility. That's something that's been presented to council a few times. We had the groundbreaking ceremony approximately 3 weeks ago. This facility will act as a yard waste. It will act as the recycling facility moving forward. They'll also be accepting more materials than our current Blue Bin program. Details to follow on exactly what that means when we're closer to the opening date of the facility. One of the large factors here to consider is the bi-weekly to weekly garbage pickup. One of the main primary goals of the environmental impact for solid waste is reducing impact to landfills. There's only so much land available for landfills. And if I understand it correctly, the province is doing everything they can to avoid landfills growing in number. They want towns and municipalities to divert as much recycling away from landfills as possible and compost. They do that. One of the ways to do that is offer the bi-weekly garbage pickup schedule. It encourages people to use the blue bin, to use the green bin quite a bit more than the garbage. One other thing to consider is we haven't ever been dinged by this, but if there is a lot of recyclables that are put into the black bins, a lot of the landfills, including the Lethbridge Regional Landfill, can charge a SERP or an extra fee on top of our tippage. It's an extra $50 per ton. So if they start noticing there's a lot of material that shouldn't be in the black bins, such as recyclables, they can charge an extra fee per ton on that certain material. So I'm working with GFL, who is our current garbage contractor, or garbage truck contractor. A transition from bi-weekly to weekly garbage collection would cost an estimated $65,000 annually. That's just for the pickup. That would be an impact to the residents, about $2 a monthly increase, $24 yearly to each resident. The variable cost, and this is the one that's quite a bit more difficult, is current tipping costs are $115 per ton for garbage and recycling, $53.50 for compost. An impact such as the move would have a tipping cost unknown at this time. I looked for some studies from other large municipalities. The one relevant one I found ended up being from 2011, so I took it out of this because that's a little bit too old to have relevant. I was trying to come to council with a percentage that we can estimate the tipping increase be, and I was unable to come up with that percentage, but we expect an increase, so I couldn't give an exact cost what we expect. So Kyle assisted me in putting some budget for 2022. So garbage, our budget's $200,000. Recycling is $60,000. Compost is $65,000. I have some decision options for council to discuss. I'd like to open the floor to any questions.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. So I guess I thank you very much for this. I wasn't clear on what I was asking for. So from October till March, what is our tonnage that we're putting in our green bins? And could we empty those one time a month rather than twice a month? Because if you've got 6 or 8 inches in it, so now that would also save on our road infrastructure, our alley infrastructure, because we're not running the truck down. It'll be one less time per year. And then in the summer months, or in those months, we could possibly increase our garbage pickup one more time. I don't think our tonnage would change in our garbage. It would just stop the garbage bins from overflowing so it doesn't blow down like from my street down the canal and catch at Dale's house, at the other end of town. So because every 2 weeks the garbage bins are heat full. And so I think, I kind of missed the mark of what I was asking, because I believe we could cut back on the green bins, it would save us money, and put that into the garbage pickup. So just take one pickup away for that 6 or 7 months, because I don't believe that those green bins are going to be full every 2 weeks when we're not doing our yard work.
I don't have specific numbers, through the mayor, through the chair to Councilor Avery. I don't have specific numbers on tonnage for those months for compost. I know the bins are used, not nearly as much as summer. That is a very obvious fact. I didn't weigh those options in this report, but you could weigh the cost of that extra. You could use the numbers that are presented here to weigh the cost of that extra pickup. It was $65,000 over the year, so you could split that into 12 months annually. One thing to consider is a change to schedule through our garbage contractors is a change to that contract. So we'd have to negotiate that for that 2 or 3 times a year, like you said, and I'd have to come back to them. And to do this, they take the information that I gave them, and this is why this report took a little longer to come back to council, is GFL takes the information I asked, what can we switch here, and they actually run a pro forma through their organization to see if they need to buy extra trucks and have extra drivers. So that is something I can do, but there is an impact to their time and our time. So
yeah, I don't need it that bad.
So, Deputy Mayor Avery, can you say that one more time, what you were just proposing?
So what I was looking for is from October till March or April, when we start doing our yard work, only emptying the green bins once a month instead of twice a month.
Oh, okay.
Because there's no, I just look at my short little street and those winter months, and I might see those green bins out once a month. I know my house personally, it doesn't go out at all in those months. So we're paying for a service that we're not using. And so I was just wondering what the cost difference would be, but I don't think you need to put any more time into it.
I apologize. I misunderstood that the last meeting.
That's fine. Thank you.
Kalen?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to highlight a bullet point under option 2, just for general discussion. Currently, we do have the option of allowing residents to have a second garbage bin. There is the fee structure here, and this is something that we haven't actively marketed, but that's something that we can certainly bring more awareness to, at least to get us through this season. And then it's up to council. If we explore Deputy Mayor Avery's question about the off-peak times for compost, that would need a little bit of time, certainly, for GFL to look into and for us to vet. However, in the meantime, there is this second bin option for those who need it, larger families, for instance, and we can, in the short term, bring awareness to this option for residents if they want to take up this user choice type model that we have right now.
Councillor Beekman.
Thank you, Mayor. Justin, in the second bin option, just out of curiosity, you buy the bin for $100 and then you are $14.75 monthly charge. Now, are you obligated for that monthly charge? Can you opt out of that at any time and still own the bin?
Through the chair to Councillor Beekman. That's something we haven't considered and formalized. This is something we should formalize, and I plan on formalizing later this year within the bylaw of how that system works. It's been used so little that there hasn't really been discussions with council or with administration of how to apply that long term. We don't just sell our bins to residents without this additional service. But if council so wish, when I bring that bylaw to update, I plan on bringing the bylaw to update that section as well to offer this as a service through the bylaw. If council so wish, that's something we can consider.
I could just help answer your question too. So if a resident does buy a bin, they would have to incur that charge as long as they own the bin. So if they want to opt out, they have to give the bin back because, once you have the bin and you say, okay, I'm not going to use it, I'm going to opt out, well, what stops the resident or business from just putting the bins out anyways, right? And then that's being charged twice to pick it up. So as long as they own it, they would still have to have it. If they want to opt out, they have to give the bin back to the town, or if it's in good condition.
Councillor Chapman, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. Just speaking in support of Deputy Mayor's idea about once a month for compost pickup. Occasionally, from time to time, there will be families that might have an overabundance of compostable, particularly with kitchen waste and whatever, that might be added to their bins. So what will happen occasionally then is that some people will resort to dumping extra of that compostable material into the black bin. So that will take place and increase the tonnage from that perspective, but that can be occasional. The other thing I'd like to emphasize too, obviously, is our coupon program, and I would just encourage the administration through our social media move that program, highlight that program for all our residents so that they can use that at their leisure any time of the year, whether it's spring, fall, or winter.
Thank you. So, Justin, question for you then. With 2.0, like, what is the realistic date? Like, not hopes and dreams, but the realistic date of when they think they'll be up and running?
Last time I spoke to them, mid-July was their plans. They are waiting on equipment that is back ordered right now, and we all have some experience in that, I believe, in our independent industries. I'm planning on September, just from the logistics part of it, rolling out information to our residents of what they can now add to the blue bin. I wanted to give them time to experience what comes in the blue bins right now, and then roll out slowly with the residents about changes to the blue bin. This is something we've had to hastily do in the past with, if this council remembers, when glass had to be removed from the blue bin. The blowback from the residents is pretty severe, so when we make changes to these programs, I like to ensure the changes are well communicated ahead of time. So my plan is to bring a report to council maybe the first week in September for what is now allowed in the blue bins, because that will be a change to the bylaw as well. So I would say realistically September up and running, but mid-July is the date they gave me. So.
Okay, Councillor Beekman.
Sorry, one more question in regards to our transfer station. Is there any, maybe I'm just unaware of it, is there anything we can do to allow residents to dump at our transfer station for a more affordable cost? The reason being is I was asked by somebody who had, they charged them $40 to dump 2 bags. Is there any way that for handling this waste, instead of, going full spectrum waste pickup every week, to make our transfer station more affordable to the citizens?
through the chair to Councilor Beekman. So it's actually not our transfer station, it's the County of Lethbridge transfer station.
Okay.
We're not partners in any way of that transfer station at this moment. So the charge, they provide that service for the County of Lethbridge, and it's not a landfill, it's actually physically a transfer station. So the fee they charge is the fee that they have to pay to fill those bins and then physically take it to the regional landfill. So that's why the expensive cost on that for residents that are in the town of Coaldale that aren't residents of the County of Lethbridge.
So then in the short term, like you were just saying a few minutes earlier, that you're going to be working on the bylaw to accept these second black bins in September in the fall. So this is not going to solve the problem then, because if we go with option number 2, where there's no change to the garbage pickup, and then we allow for someone to buy the extra bin or rent it for $100 and then $14.75 a month charge, this is something that they want up and running within the next few weeks. So historically, you didn't want to advertise this. So if we were to, instead of raising everybody's collection fees by $2, we do an option 2 where people can opt into the second bin and pay the additional $14.75 a month. How quick can we have that up and running?
That's a good question. We currently do this, but it's outside of the bylaw. This is a service we've offered to people who have condos or maybe a basement suite. Those are the ones we've approved up to this point. And that would be a question I would have for our CAO and council is, do we want to acceptably start that program outside of the bylaw, or would you like me to bring that bylaw back at the next council meeting to add that part?
Kalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One question through to Dustin here. How many bins do we have in our stockpile in the event that there are, say, hundreds of people who are interested in this option? How many bins would we have available to roll out if we were to market this program?
I'm not sure the exact number, but we usually keep 150. We're down on that because our bins are back ordered, of course. So I believe we have about 50 on hand right now. So if hundreds of people sign up for this program, we'd be in trouble pretty quick on the bins. So that's a great question.
Thank you. So this looks like it could be a doable option as long as we have the bins in, correct?
Yes. What I would say in the bylaw, as long as the bin is available and we can order them outside of the current situation with ordering, these bins are actually really easy to get. We can have them here very quickly, and I'm hoping by the end of the summer that is the case again.
Okay, so depending on the appetite of council, if they go with option 1 or 2, in case they go for number 2, would it be safe to say that you could have that bylaw back to us in 2 weeks?
Yes. With that part, I won't update the stuff for 2.0 yet, but I can have the bylaw back to council with the next council.
And then we can do once you have that bylaw, we have that passed, and we can do a social media, because there's quite a few people that are wanting this option. And I think this is the fairest way of doing it, instead of having everybody pay $2 an extra month on their collection fee. So as long as you can do that, and then we can, as part of the social media blitz, we can say something to the effect like first come, first serve, and there'll be a waiting list, what have you. So, okay, any further questions for Justin? Councillor Pickering.
Yeah, Justin, I'm reverting back to what Deputy Mayor Avery said. So what you're suggesting is if we go to a weekly garbage pickup, you're going to get more put in the bins? Is that what you're concerned about? Because I can tell you right now, from my experience with our Canelo where he is, we're taking 2 dump trailers a week of Coaldale's garbage to the landfill because of exactly what he's saying. And I think for $2, like looking at it from my point of view, I'd be more than willing to pay that to have weekly garbage pickup in the summer, every other week, or like every week. But I can't see it picking up that much more because you're just going to be, it'll be the cost of carrying, it'll be the only increase, I think.
Through the chair to Councillor, it's just the key considerations. I'm I'm okay with either direction council chooses to go with. But the key considerations are the environmental impact, like I discussed, the chances of residents not being motivated to divert the recycling and compost waste as much as possible, and the cost. So those are my two considerations for council. I'm okay with either decision council makes.
Okay, thank you. And just clarification, what Deputy Mayor Avery was referring to is in the winter months, not in the summer months. So we wouldn't.
Oh, go ahead.
So we wouldn't be doing compost like during the winter months once a month, then, right? Correct?
Okay.
Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This may be a comment that the two things that occur to me. One is that obviously with extra pickups, obviously $2 a month is going to be negligible when it comes down to the impact on back alleys and some of the roads, streets that we already are doing road or traveling on at least 2 or 3 times a week on those same roads. So I'd be discouraging us from overusing or having more travel on those roads. So I guess my question more is to through what Councillor Pickering was alluding to, is that if we went to this weekly pickup till September until 2.0 gets up and running, would that change the picture?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, I don't see the 2.0 impacting the black bins. It's impacting the blue bins.
Okay, so the blue bins then. Okay, I like the idea that we either receive this for information and that you would come back with the proposal for a bylaw for that additional bin. And we do have that in place already where people can pay that at $14.75 a month for an extra black bin or an extra bin period. Is that how that works?
That needs to be reflected in bylaw. We currently do it and we offer it for condos and basement suites, and it's an approval process that we have internally, but it needs to be reflected in the bylaw.
Okay, so if somebody wants an extra compost bin or an extra blue bin or something to that effect.
This is only for the black bin for this discussion.
Currently it'd be for the black bin.
So we wouldn't need to table. We could still go with option number 2, and you would bring back the bylaw in 2 weeks to take care of this.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
The wording that we need for that. That's doable, Kalen?
I believe so, Mr. Mayor. Thanks.
Okay. So with that being said, any further, Deputy Mayor Avery?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to accept option number 2.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, we're going to go to agenda item 4.4, the Do Crew National Award that Councillor Chapman is going to speak on.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn, and through to Council. After last Council's meeting, we weren't aware about this at the time of the meeting, but back in March, the Youth Do Crew, coordinated by Shannon Rawlick, who presented on the free pantry program for Coaldale, and it was only after that meeting, that council meeting, that we learned that they had received an award of which they were one of 10 groups in Canada who received the Sustainable Development Goals for Youth Awards, and the ceremony was held at the University of Waterloo. Although our group had virtual, it was a real surprise to Shannon and to the group, and of course accolades, because obviously this Youth Do Crew are part of the Coaldale program and 3 other communities, including Colehurst, Raymond, and Tabor. So I'd like to offer a motion to write a letter of congratulations to our coordinator, Shannon Rolick and the FCSS Youth Do crew, who have done such an exceptional job of their program in Coaldale, and we're just letter of congratulations on their award.
Thank you. Is there any questions or comments for Councillor Chapman's? So, Councillor Chapman, if you could forward that information to our municipal clerk then, that you have. So there's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And I'm just going to jump ahead on the schedule. We're going to go up to 8.1. We're going to have our Manager of Community Policing, Mark Anderson, speak on item 8.1 dog control regarding the Coaldale Pet Clinic Memorandum of Understanding.
Thank you, Mayor.
And just before you start too, is there going to be any comments or questions from Shelby that she should be up here with you, or?
Shelby can certainly join me in case there are questions, absolutely.
Okay, Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you. As council knows, thank you for having me here again this evening. As you're aware, we entered into a new era in March when we had to come up with some new ideas for dealing with captured stray dogs in the town of Coaldale. And we formed a committee which involves members of council, the mayor, and Lisa Reese. Thank you very much for helping out with us. We determined in committee that we needed to form a partnership to deal with animals on a short-term basis here in town. And the Coaldale Pet Clinic stepped forward and offered to partner with us. And as a result of our meetings, we have come up with a memorandum of understanding to outline a policy and terms of agreement between the town of Coaldale and the Coaldale Pet Clinic. And I'm bringing that here tonight for council to review so that we can move forward with a more formal arrangement for looking after animals captured here in the town now that we do not have the services of upper animal services anymore. The memorandum of understanding was attached to the agenda item, and it's very basic. It lays out the terms of the agreement. First of all, that the agreement would be in effect for animals captured during regular business hours for the Coaldale Pet Clinic. After hours, we do not have an arrangement other than the one that we have right now with Raymond to use their dog pound facility. It covers the pet clinic doing a cursory examination of dogs that are captured to make sure that, first of all, that they are safe and healthy and that there's no injuries. They would look after that dog for the first business day for us while we attempt to locate owners, which would provide a proper animal shelter area for them and proper care. They would also return the animal to the owner once the owner is located, provided the owner has attended town offices first, paid any fees associated with the capture, licensing, etc., and would obtain a release document from our town clerk here before going to the pet clinic to retrieve their dog. Any financial transactions related to a captured animal would be handled by the town, and the Coaldale Pet Clinic would just supply us a monthly bill for any services rendered, along with a description of what those services were for. In addition, this agreement would allow us to turn over dogs to other humane agencies in the interim, so that we could have those dogs adopted out by others. And we are making those arrangements as we speak. Now, they're not formalized at this point yet. But the impact that would have for town council would be that any animal that we have held for either 72 hours for an unknown dog or 10 days for a dog of which we know who the owner is, once that animal becomes adoptable, it would return to the pet clinic to make sure it has a complete vet examination, any vaccinations, any spay or neuter, before it goes to a humane society for adoption. It's actually more cost effective if we do that for ourselves here in town than if you try to surrender an unaltered dog to any of the humane societies. It costs a significant amount of money to that humane society to take in, so those costs are passed back to us in any event. that really highlights what the memorandum is about. And it's a partnership between the town, between the Coaldale Pet Clinic, in order to help us out in the interim. The one benefit I see in this agreement is that it's ongoing and reviewable. So when we have a permanent solution, either party can leave this memorandum of understanding without any penalties. But it gives us our terms. The other thing I think council needs to be aware of is that the fee structure that's attached to this memorandum of understanding is reviewed twice a year, once in January and once in June. And cost increases are based solely on increased costs on pet food and pet supplies and veterinary medicines, which is normally in June, and then the Coaldale Pet Clinic facility does their fee restructuring in January of every year. So we would need to come back at those 2 times just with an updated price list for council.
Thank you. Then Shelby, if you could turn your mic on and just introduce yourself and just walk us through what happens when Mark brings a dog to the pet clinic.
So I'm Shelby Gibson. I'm the manager of Coaldale Pet Clinic. So what happens right now with this memorandum of understanding is if a dog is found within regular business hours, because Coaldale Pet Clinic is not open in the evenings or on the weekends, so this has to happen during regular business hours. If the pet will be brought to us, where it will be checked for a microchip and any form of identification. If it has none, it can stay with us for the day, and then posts go up on social media, various other avenues that Mark has. From there, if there is no ownership claim, then the peace officers take the dog to Raymond facility where it's housed and kept there until an owner can be found, or until the allotted time. I apologize, I can't remember the word. The allotted time until it can become adoptable. Beyond that, if the pet is unclaimed, it comes back to us after the allotted period of time. It gets a full vet check, vaccinations, any kind of health considerations. So, for example, if it needs any kind of antibiotics to treat anything like that, et cetera, et cetera. Then from there, we will arrange for a time and date for the pet to get spayed or neutered if it's not already. And then from there, that pet becomes adoptable. So either that means that it goes to a humane society or some other kind of society to be adopted out, or it kind of is based off of that. It goes to a foster home of some kind. That's what can be adopted.
Thank you. And then Mark, in 2021, you had 7 dogs that went unclaimed. How many do we have so far this year?
We have 2 unclaimed dogs so far this year.
Okay. I'll open it up to council. Deputy Mayor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. Not speaking in favor or against the MOU. Years ago, we had our own pound, and I'm just wondering why we're not exploring that option. If we're going to be actively doing animal control, why are we not looking at providing housing for them within our towns? A lot of our residents work outside of town. If little Poochie gets out when the kids come home from school, then by the time parents get home and see little Poochie on Facebook, there's no way to pick them up. So now it's out for the night because it's already been taken to Raymond or it's in jail somewhere else. So why are we not looking at actively providing for our citizens? If we're going to do this service, you're either in or you're out. And this way we're like, we've got one foot in, but we're hesitating to actually provide this service for our residents.
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor Avery. Actually, that is part of the work that the committee is working on right now, is to identify those other options. One that we're actively working on right now is a foster parent program in town, so we can have dogs stay with foster parents. But there are some procedural things that we have to go through first, insurance, things like that. Also, we are actively looking at forming a society here in town, a humane society for Coaldale, which would have a facility, but we're not far enough along yet to be able to present that to council. We are actively building a committee, including community volunteers, locally and people with expertise in the humane industry to help us form a plan for develop a budget and to develop a really permanent solution here in Coaldale. We're just not quite there yet.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan, and thank you to both of you for all your hard work on this idea and this plan, this MOU. I'm in support of it. I'd like to ask Mark Anderson just the two questions about monitoring calls and follow-up. Is that your responsibility in terms of a call? So, for example, somebody's missing a pet or some strays running around and somebody calls you, that will be your responsibility?
Ultimately, I'm responsible for my unit and their actions in following up on calls of that nature, yes.
Okay. So my second question to you is, is this program that you're entering, is it a reactive program, or is this something that you will be, if you see a stray animal on your own, you'll try to see if it's abandoned or close to home, or how do you deal with that?
My CPOs and myself, in the course of our duties, look for animals that are out running at large. It's not something we are out assigned to on a specific day to specifically look for at-large animals. It's something that we would come upon in the course of our duties, and yes, we're equipped to handle that situation and deal with it on our own.
Any further questions? So our options are that council, did you have a question? Okay. Our options are that council may accept the memorandum of understanding as presented and direct administration to sign the MOU. Council may propose amendments to the MOU and direct administration to enter further discussions with the Coaldale Pet Clinic, or council may reject the MOU. Is there anybody? Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. I move to make a motion of council may accept the MOU as presented and direct administration to sign the MOU.
Thank you. And then the only question I got on that is that you're looking at, based on your 2021 of 7 dogs at $300, operating cost of $2,100. So is there a cap built into this, or is it just going to be $300 per animal?
The $300 is an approximation of what it would cost us each animal. There is a fee structure attached.
Yes.
And it would be based solely on the number of dogs that we would capture in the year, or we would have unclaimed in the year.
So then, would it be fair to ask for you to give us quarterly updates on how many dogs we've had to deal with?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So there's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Make sure you send out an email, Shelby, in a couple of weeks.
I will. Thank you.
Good luck with your new baby. Okay, we're going to back up to agenda item 7.1, area structure plan bylaw 844-P-03-22 regarding the West Industrial Area Structure Plan regarding second and third reading. We have our town planner, Melanie Messier, presenting. Welcome, Mel.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So I'm here before you today to present the West Industrial Area Structure Plan with the amendments that are following the previous meeting on April 25th. So within the revised plan, you'll find the following amendments: removal of Lot 4, Block 1, Plan 1811388, and also updates to all corresponding figures throughout the document to reflect that change. The updated plan totals 134 acres, so this is minus the 14 acres of the lot that was removed. Additions and updates to the consultation section were also included, just to highlight the public engagement that was done through Let's Connect Coaldale. And also an updated landscaping policy, so landscaping policy 4.4.8. Just makes it clear that any industrial parcels adjacent to residential development may be required to have additional landscaping just near to that 14th Avenue right of way. Additional updates also include within Table 2, there's the ASP land use statistics, and within there is a 7% decrease to the storm pond, and that is again reflective of removing that parcel. And lastly, updates to the figures to remove the cul-de-sac in the southern portion of the plan area. And also shifting the storm pond north to align with the existing northeast industrial storm pond that is just directly east of the plan area. So the revised version of the plan takes into consideration the feedback that was provided again at the April 25th, 2022 meeting. Additional changes to the plan include changes in location of the utility rights of way, just to ensure that they're not located within Lot 4 or the Thames parcel. It is the position of staff that the current plan will accommodate the efficient servicing and development of the plan area, while mitigating the concerns that were heard during the public hearing. So council may wish to consider the options that are presented before them today, with a staff recommendation that council provides second and third reading of the revised area structure plan bylaw 844-P-03-22. And I am happy to answer any questions regarding the revised plan.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. Thank you, Mel and Cam, for your work on getting this ready for tonight. And I would like to make second reading of bylaw 844-P-03-22.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. Just two quick questions, if I may, to Melanie. One, my first question is, did you have to speak with the surrounding landowners about this redevelopment?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, yes, the consultant has been working with the landowners in terms of Lot 4's parcel, or the owner of Lot 4. We haven't had communications with him since the public hearing. However, we have kept all of our social media, our Let's Connect updated, and there is that channel of communication. We were just never approached.
My second question to you is the section of land that is being removed from the area structure plan. That party, and being that the municipal reserve area, the green area with the pond, is being moved out of that section of land. Will the party that's being removed from this area structure plan, are they going to use that as part of their MR then in terms of their development?
Sorry, for Lot 4, would they use the storm pond as part of their MR? And no, they would have to go through their own separate process. Okay. And it could be less comprehensive than a completely new ASP. It could be they can collaborate with other landowners to come up with an appropriate solution.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll call the question on Deputy Mayor's motion. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 7.2, rezoning bylaw 845-P-03-22 West Industrial Area Structure Plan. And Melanie's going to present on that as well.
Mayor. So bylaw 845-P-03-22 is a bylaw to redesignate the lands within the West Industrial ASP area from urban reserve to industry I and highway commercial C2. The bylaw also proposes establishing municipal reserve and public utility lot area, while also again removing Lot 4 from the plan area. The proposal remains largely unchanged from the initial first reading. And so with that, council's respectfully requested to consider the options presented before them this evening with the staff recommendation that council provides second and third reading of the revised rezoning bylaw 845-P-03-2022 or 22 as presented.
Thank you, Mel. And I just have to back to 7.1. I'm looking for someone to sponsor third reading regarding area structure plan bylaw 844-P-03-22. Can I get a sponsor? Councillor Reese, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I apologize for that. So moving back to 7.2, the calling for second reading on bylaw 845-P-03-22. Councillor Beekman. Any further discussion? Deputy Mayor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. Is that the right number or should be 04-22? Because didn't we just pass second and third reading of that bylaw?
We passed 844-P, now we're talking 845.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Beekman has a motion for second reading. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the discussion. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Can I get a sponsor for third reading? Councillor Saylor, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mal. Okay, moving on to 7.3. We're going to have our Chief Financial Officer and Deputy CAO, Kyle Beauchamp, present property tax 2022 bylaw 851-C-05-22 regarding first reading. Kyle, the floor is yours.
Thanks and good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, so we have first reading for the 2022 property tax bylaw. So as part of this, we're just looking for first reading. As part of the recent annexations in the town of Coaldale and those annexation agreements, the town of Coaldale must charge those properties the tax rates that Lethbridge County would normally charge them. Lethbridge County, just a couple of days ago, formalized their tax rates. So upon second and third reading, when we bring that back in 2 weeks, there will be a slight change in those rates to adjust the Lethbridge County 2022 tax rates. So that's why we're just looking for first reading tonight. Part of the last council meeting, we kind of talked about the tax strategy and where Coaldale sits in our comparisons compared to residential and non-residential, and that split, the ratio there. And what I've done is I brought back council four options to consider regarding the mill rate. So the way the property tax works is once council sets the budget, approves the budget, which we had done at the December 20th council meeting, the total tax dollars required to fund the budget is just over $9 million. Once the assessment figures are finalized based on assessment change and inflation, that budget amount doesn't change, but the actual tax percentage increase can fluctuate based on estimates. So it was kind of a moving target, as you kind of see from the staff report. Originally a budget, we're at 1.72% tax increase, and then as of last month we're at 1.35, and now that things have finally finalized, we're at 1.11 tax increase overall across the board. In looking at kind of some options here for council to consider, in the staff report I've highlighted them as options 1, 2, 3, 4. Option 1 is essentially keeping your residential mill rate the same, which has a slight tax increase, and then increasing the non-residential to the amount required to balance the budget. Option number 2 is to increase the residential and the non-residential tax rates at the same ratio, so 1 to 1. So the increase is even on a percentage basis between those two. And option number 3 is to increase the non-residential tax rate at a 2-to-1 ratio. Added option number 4 in here too. Council can also consider amending the budget if they choose for adding $60,000 to the budget, which can be allocated to a particular capital reserve or project for future years, which would mean we would be at a 1.72% tax increase as we had previously anticipated as part of the 2022 budget. So a few options there for council to consider. part of the staff report here, I've taken the average property value for the town of Coaldale for the residential, commercial, and industrial, and shown what each option would relate for those properties. As well as scrolling through here, I've also updated those comparable rates for what each option would essentially result in a change. So we're kind of looking here. So option number one, I'll just pick on this one here. The top part here is what the mill rates would be. You go down here, this kind of highlights the change in the mill rate. So you can see that for option number one, the actual tax rate would increase by 0.9% for residential and 4.7% for non-residential. And looking at the impact, you can see that there would be a 1.37% increase in residential taxes for an average property. Commercial property would be a 3.17% increase in an average property. And industrial would be 6.79% increase. The reason these differ is that residential inflation was fairly flat in the year, 0.5%. Commercial properties actually had a 1.48% decrease. And industrial had a almost 2% increase in inflation, so that's why it's somewhat different across the board. So there's a lot of information, a lot of data here. I'm just going to kind of turn this back to council and answer any questions or kind of leave the scope if we want to narrow this down between a few options here.
Thank you, Kyle. I'll open up to members of council. Any questions, comments? Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Van Ryan, and through to Kyle. Just a quick question about this year versus next year. So at just a little today, we approved a capital idea for the chill plant for the behind the new Civic Center. So next year we have to raise taxes for that, I suppose. So I'm just wondering if raising taxes this year would help stabilize next year's budget. And I'm not speaking in favor of either of any of the proposals, but I'm just wondering what your direction would be in terms of looking at this year to next year if we're going to have to increase again.
And not, I'll answer the question, but not specifically to the jailer, but I understand the concept of what you're speaking to is that when we're looking at tax increases or changes to the tax rates, nobody likes tax increases. We all pay taxes here, but costs do increase. So, as a municipality, we do grow and we do have increased development and whatnot, but our operating costs do increase as we can all see, cost of living does increase. One of the things to look at is almost mitigating large increases into your tax rate, like significant fluctuations. So one thing you may not want to do one year is you're at low tax increase or zero tax increase for a couple years, and then we're back at a big 10% or whatnot tax increase. We haven't increased property taxes for the last couple of years, but through kind of some budget efficiencies we've identified, we haven't had that big spike into it. So one option to consider is that if town council does want to maintain a tax increase at a nominal value, whatever that is, you can take those additional funds over and above the current budget and kind of throw it in the piggy bank for future use to kind of help mitigate future large tax increases. That is one option to consider. In looking at the budget in mind, or the residents' spending in mind, is that we did have some increases to the utility rates as well as to the franchise fees. So those are all three options to which they do go back to the ratepayers and taxpayers. So it's just kind of important to consider all of those three together, because those all add up as an increase to our residents and to our businesses as to find that good balance between the tax increase and funding the services required for the long-term sustainability of the municipality.
That answer your question? And Carl, if I could just get you to speak a little bit about the educational tax levy and the senior housing tax levy, what percentage that's going to be adding to whatever the outcome of our increase is.
So the education and the seniors tax levy, on that is that those are both amounts that are requisitioned by Green Acres and by the government of Alberta. So what they do is they come back and say, this is the total amount of funds that your municipality must pay us for these services, divide these among your tax base. So while town council does have authority over the municipal tax rate and setting that, there is no authority over setting those rates to collect those levies. So on the education portion, we're looking at $3,050,000 this year. That is up over $200,000 from 2.84 from the year before. The Green Acres amount has increased from 156,000 in 2021 to 168,000 this year. In regarding to a percentage increase on the education portion for residential, that's approximately a 3.6% increase.
One more time, please.
3.6% in the mill rate. And in the non-residential, the mill rate increases by about 8.3%. Green Acres, those tax rates are the same for residential and non-residential, so that's 5.2% increase. And to touch base on that, while we take our assessments from benchmark based on last year and we tax it this year, the province in these requisitions, they use a slightly different method called equalized assessment, which is it takes almost the average or a couple years before and kind of combines it and evens it out a bit. So their assessment numbers that they're using are slightly different than ours. And the reason for that is that can cause some fluctuation based on a large increase one year and potentially a lower increase the other year. This is why we're seeing a 5.2% increase in Green Acres and such a large increase in the Alberta one. Is there is sometimes some slightly timing differences on that, just to provide some commentary on the large percentage increases for that as well. Is that fully?
Yes. Thank you. Any further questions for Kyle? So I'll just go through the options for our motions. Option number 1, no increase in the residential tax rate. However, the council increased the non-residential tax rate only in order to balance the budget. Option 2, the residential and non-residential tax rates are increased at the same ratio, 1-to-1. Option 3, the non-residential tax rate is increased at a 2-to-1 ratio compared to the residential tax rate. And option 4, council can amend and increase the operating budget by $60,000 and allocate these funds to a particular capital reserve or project. This would be the equivalent of a 1.72% that was previously anticipated when council approved the 2022 operating budget. I'll open it up to council. Any member want to take on one of those options? Deputy Mayor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. I would like to make the motion to accept option number 1.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Opposed, Councillor Beekman and Councillor Saylor. Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 7.4, borrowing bylaw 850-B-04-22, line of credit, third reading. And Kyle is presenting on that as well. Go ahead, Kyle.
So first and second readings for bylaw 850-B-04-22 were passed by town council at the April 25th, 2022 regular council meeting. Administration is seeking a borrowing bylaw or a line of credit borrowing bylaw that will enable the town of Coaldale with access to a line of credit for $4 million for our BMO. The town of Coaldale is currently in a healthy cash position and is not in immediate need or in future need anticipated of the use of any of these funds. The intention of this is to merely have these exist as an additional resource available to the town of Coaldale for emergency use or extenuating circumstances. Also, as well as possible delays in grant funding or other funding as well to fund various projects as needed, if applicable. What we've done from the bylaw is we've essentially taken it from first and second reading and we have added point 7 as town council had requested at first and second reading. Point 7 says the withdrawal of funds from this credit facility must be approved by town council through the passing of every council motion. So this essentially means that access or use to this credit facility is restricted without approval with approval from town council before occurring. That being said, I'll turn it back to council for any questions.
Thank you. And then just for our viewers at home, this particular agenda item was brought up at the last meeting where we tried to do all 3 readings in one night. And as part of that, we needed unanimous consent, which was defeated. So we have to bring it back tonight for a third reading. So I'll open it up to council for any questions, comments to our CFO, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. Maybe just more of an informative from my perspective that this line of credit is like having a credit card where you can own this credit card, but you don't need to use it. It's there when you do need to use it. So that to me becomes sort of the purpose of the $4 million line of credit. So I would propose that we move with third reading of the bylaw.
Any further questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. So just in speaking against it, so item number 6 as security for payment of money borrowed here under the municipality hereby charges to and in favor of BMO Bank Montreal the whole of the tax levy. So that's giving them a whole, like if we renege, they can come in and we're giving control of our town to BMO and our tax dollars. So just, this is the way I read this section. So, we got to be very cognizant that if we're going to be giving somebody else control, if we get into a situation where we need the money, they can now take our tax revenue as they see fit. So they'll handcuff us as council.
Kyle, do you have a comment on that, please?
I'm just reading.
Deputy Mayor Avery, can you give us that point number again, please?
Number 6. If you read through the whole thing, it's basically saying the mayor and the municipality hereby authorize on behalf of the name of the municipality to execute. So once this is executed, we give them, if we can't make a payment for some unforeseen reason that we had to use this money.
So my interpretation of it is when we enter into borrowing bylaws too for like it used to be Alberta Capital Finance Authority, but now just the Treasury Board, is that anytime the municipality takes out a debenture or some type of debt, it is basically secured against the municipality as a whole, to which the municipality then will have to raise tax dollars to fund said debt payment or debenture payment as well. So if the town of Coaldale was to use this credit facility or whatnot, it is responsible to repay back the credit facility, and against as our revenue is taxes levied, they would have to basically levy taxes to pay back the amount. So with that said, is that the intention of this credit facility is that with it having to be approved by town council, the credit facility won't be used kind of on at an ad hoc basis to fund general operations that will have to be funded through tax dollars. It will be used for specific purposes that will have an ultimate funding source in mind, with controls in place set by town council that they must approve any use of the funds prior to passing a motion. So the specific nature at this point in the security is that generally anytime a municipality does incur any debts or debenture, the security over that debt is generally taken on by the municipality as a whole, as it's not against a specific asset such as a bank loan for a truck or the mortgage on your property. There's always security in any debt that the municipality takes. That being tax dollars that the municipality has available to levy to pay such debt as they incur. So some little commentary to that, if that kind of helps address any points.
That answer your question? Okay, thank you. So there's a motion on the floor by Councillor Chapman to proceed with third reading of the bylaw. Any more questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Opposed is Councillor Beekman, Councillor Pickering, and Deputy Mayor Avery. Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 8.2, we have our Director of Recreation and Community Services, Russ Tanner, presenting on the Southern Alberta Summer Games 2022. Go ahead, Russ.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. So the Southern Alberta Summer Games has been running each summer since 1970. It's actually currently the longest running games in Western Canada. And each year in the past, a community within the southern region would host those games. Unfortunately, in 2020 and 2021, those games were canceled due to COVID. And the Southern Alberta Recreation Association felt like a third year with no games would be detrimental to the long-standing grassroots festival. And so they've decided to go a little bit different approach for 2022. They open up the opportunity to each one of the 13 regions to be able to host what events that they chose fit to do so. And so our community service department approached Coaldale Baseball Association, the Coaldale Pickleball Group, Pickleball Club, and the Coaldale Fun Cribbage Group to fill out what involvement they may wish to have. And they were all very positive in wanting to host a tournament here in Coaldale. One of the benefits certainly from hosting these events will certainly be the economic spin-off to the community, is what we're hoping with having such an event here. And so we did make a pledge to be able to host those games here, those 3 tournaments. We've offered up free rental of space and staff time to be able to support those groups within these functions. And we wanted to come to council and make sure the council is aware that those events are taking place in July on the weekend of the 14th and 15th. So, and see if you had any other questions for me concerning that. This, I actually should mention also, one of the things that in the rationale that we placed in here is this would provide Coaldale an opportunity to kind of do a dry run on some of the events that we would then be hosting if we're awarded the 2024 games, which we've formally forwarded the attached letter asking and requesting that we do that in hopes that at that time not only can we showcase Coaldale's fine facilities in the Quads Baseball Diamond, the Eastview Park, but also the multi-purpose facility that is currently scheduled to be done by that time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments to Russ? I just have a question, Russ. So how does this normally work? because we had one or two members of council find out about this on the street. Like we weren't aware of this, so how would this normally proceed?
Well, normally if the event is taking place from a host community, you do the bid process similar to what we've done for 2024 with the mayor's written consent. In this case of this year, in hindsight, we certainly could have done that. We did feel that with the excitement currently of these groups wanted to be a part of it, and for the most part them hosting a tournament, we did feel like it was kind of a first come, first served situation. So with their blessing, we went forward with that application.
Okay, so moving forward, council will be made aware of these little plans ahead of time?
Absolutely, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. Any, Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Van Ryan, through to Russ. Just a quick question. Each of the three groups, will they be administering their portion of the games? Would they be handling everything, or what would be our part in them?
Well, our part would be the support, staff support, but really what happens, and even a year that we're host, if we host in 2024, what you do is you get sport chairs for each one of the events, and those sport chairs basically run each one of their events with the support of our administration. We would generally hire a games chairperson as part of our budget. So for the host games, I'll give you an example of 2017 games just because I'm intimately involved with those and having hosted them just recently in Brooks. There's anywhere from $130,000 to $150,000 budget implied within hosting the games. So there's a cost to the local community. Southern Alberta Rec Association provides a portion of registrations to go to the community, which is around $60,000 of that. But there is still a commitment for that budget for that year. These ones this year, the way they're being developed, Southern Alberta Rec Association is providing every bit of registration and allowing the community to determine what that registration is. So what we've done is we've allowed Coaldale Minor Baseball and the Pickleball Club and the Cribbage Group to come up with a budget and then provide what the registration fee would be to cover off on the costs. And like I said, then we would provide an administrative time and the facilities for free to make sure that there is no cost incurred by them.
So with that being said, Councillor Chapman, would you entertain sponsoring, accepting this for information?
I'll make that motion.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And now Russ is going to be presenting on the Recreation and Community Services update. Russ, whenever you're ready.
Okay, you bet. I'm hoping that the keyboard will do it, right? Perfect. Awesome. All right. So first of all, yeah, this is quarter report. Here's the highlights of what this report will be covering. If council has any other questions, you certainly can ask those. But we'll be going over a number of projects that have taken place within the last year. This being the first quarterly report from this department in some time. So first of all, the Alberta Transportation lot facelift. That's just a lot adjacent to Town Hall here. And it's on the main corridor, and it also consists of just a little bit of a facelift along the main corridor. What we've certainly done here is we've done some tree care. We've removed some unhealthy trees and pruned existing trees, and we also even relocated one tree. There's a plan to continue to do that with some trees over in that location in the future. We've also installed irrigation so that that lot and the work we've done can be maintained and sustained. We've top dressed the area and seeded it. We've erected a property line fence on the east side as well. And further cleanup will continue with this as an additional oversee this year to make sure that it takes. Another project that we've completed that everybody's aware of that I'll just update you on is the mountain bike park. Projected completion, so the project completion with the help of the following sponsor, it took place this past year: the Owl's Nest Campground, the Coaldale Kinsman Club, Green Evergreen Implements, Alpenland Ski and Cycle, and Ascent Cycle. The park opened for use September 10th in 2021. The following amenities were completed this past season: the picnic shelter by the Kinsmen, in partnership with the Kinsmen, and permanent signage is actually on order. I had hoped that it would be actually up this week, but we're still waiting. Like many other supplies, we're waiting for some things. And then also the tables and benches are starting to be installed as we speak at the picnic table and a few benches along the pathway and up at some advantage points above in elevation. Maintenance and upkeep of the park will be accomplished in partnership with the park staff that are learning this type of upkeep, as well as the contractors coming in within the operating budget to help train staff on how to do that. Another project was the Gem of the West foundation repair. Just wanted to point out here that due to the moisture penetration in the basement of the building, the following construction processes took place in order to do so. Sections of the foundation were exposed systematically so that we could make sure that structurally it was sound. The foundation was wrapped with a waterproofing membrane. Additional drainage systems were installed as well, so some additional sump pumps and weeping towel. External fixtures such as the sidewalks and parking lot and staircases were also redone and refurbished and put in. The interior floor was replaced where it was damaged, and also some drywall. And the exterior parging is planned for 2022 so that we can actually help with the exterior of it and match up with what looks like 2 or 3 different stages of purging. So. Another project is the new refrigeration slab and dasher boards at the arena. And so the project was completed under budget. In fact, the surplus from that budget allowed us to take care of a few items that were needing some. The dehumidification unit was coming up for replacement in the next couple of years, and it actually had gone down just prior to the end of the previous season before this. We did get it up and going to last this season, but we were encouraged that there were a few parts to be able to be obtained for that unit had we gone forward and gone through any major issues. And so we used some surplus funds to go with that, and so you won't see that cost coming up in the next 2 years here. And then also the doors on the west lobby were such that they weren't closing properly, and within the building's age and shift, they just were causing a little bit of a concern with egress and emergencies and things like that. So we were able to replace those as well. We opened it just in time for the 2021-2022 season. We did close a little bit earlier with our user groups in hopes that we could open a little bit early. In hindsight, it's still good that we did that because we may not have made the beginning of the 2021-2022 season. Once we'd actually removed the previous slab, we found that there were quite a few issues with drainage, that the weeping towel actually caved within itself, and some of the things that we had hoped not to do, we had to do. And again, we were able to do that within budget. Users have expressed their satisfaction with the end product. Some of the improvements I just want to point out that this project did, besides a brand new refrigeration floor and efficiencies, was the increased glass heights, which also improves playability for the teams that are using it, keeps the puck in play more often. The more forgiving boards, these are aluminum framed boards rather than steel boards that didn't move when you hit them. If you've played hockey, you understand where that comes from for sure. There's a seamless glass also that improved sight lines and visibility for the fans. There's the corner radiuses that used to be very deep, and they were 18-foot radiuses on average, and now they're the NHL 25-foot radiuses. Quite a bit of difference there, and certainly more safe for play as well. And then the concrete surface is more usable. We can actually have lacrosse come and play in there now. It's certainly usable and functional for that, trade shows and things like that. It's a better surface. And then the improved accessibility as well. What I mean by that is there used to be a full foot drop down to the playing surface, and now there's only like an inch a drop. So the accessibility for wheelchairs and if we were to do different types of activities, even with on the ice. There's just improved accessibility all around. So, all right. Next project is the quad baseball and soccer field automated irrigation system. Prior to May of this year, irrigation controls of the quads were 100% manual. And a full-time automated system was installed in April of this year, and that resulted in more effective use of staff's time. We average, during the season anyhow, 20 hours per week of staff going around and opening valves and closing them and things like that. More appropriate watering schedules has resulted in, that should say healthier turf, sorry for the typo there. Healthier turf, the bottom line is we're able to water them at the proper times and for the proper durations. And in sports fields and things, if you actually overwater them, you're promoting deeper root growth, and if you do that, then it's relying on that, and you have to continue to overwater it and things. In this case, you're able to water it multiple times and be able to keep that shallow root base, less water applied, stronger turf actually in the end. The lower water consumption obviously results in savings, cost savings, and then also less vandalism or repairs and costs, because the main water cycle is actually happening during the night when people aren't around and kicking heads off if they're up, which tends to just, I don't know, people just have that reflex that they like to do if they see irrigation up next to a sidewalk especially and things like that. So, all right. And then the big one here, the Recreation Center construction. I just wanted to provide an update as to where that is. We'll do it quickly on the construction, but we'll update you a little bit on the budget, where that's at, and some things we're doing to help out with budget. Construction project, as you're aware, is well underway. The structural steel is being erected from the north building to the south. They're not yet to the Recreation Center, but they will be there within the next week. And I'm told that with the teams they're working this time, it'll take about 2 weeks for the structural steel to be up in the Recreation Center portion. Expected completion date of the project is early 2024. The following agreements are currently being worked on, and that is the school's joint use agreement and the daycare and after-school program and services. We hope to be able to announce that to the community soon here in the future. An increase in the material costs during the tender process impacted the construction budget quite significantly, as you're aware. And the construction budget was adjusted after the following measures were taking place. We did do some cost-saving measures investigation concerning construction decisions, materials and colors and paint and everything you'll see in just a minute. We'll go over that in detail. And then the fundraising goals also increased to help that out, and the partnership with Color School Division on some equipment. We are looking at, sharing some of the equipment where we can to be able to help with some cost savings. So. All right, so I'm just going to explain point by point the Recreation Center budget update here and its evolution into where we currently are. All right. First of all, the construction budget at $17,694,210 is the what we're looking at as a fixed cost contract with Ward Brothers. What happened is after that first tender came back, we were facing obviously a larger number than that, and so we got together and worked on a budget that we felt, and this is the January 7th cost savings, and we were at a meeting on January 7th where we went line by line through the entire tender to see where we could project some cost savings with our consultants and with the school division and with the architects. And the cost savings of $799,020 is what helped us arrive at that $17,694,210 figure, with a contingency that we kept out of the project, out of that signed contract, of $435,387. So that cost savings projection as of January 7th was, again, like I said, to a meeting. Then the contractors went away from that meeting, and on February 17th came back to us and provided us with these numbers, suggesting that some of the cost savings we had projected we couldn't actually realize. And so what had happened is that number actually shrunk to 547,790. Well, we weren't okay with that, so we went through further pressure and went through line items after line items, and we found some additional cost savings in March of this year. Unfortunately, at the same time, we also realized that there was no budget line item taking site utilities and site utilities into effect during construction, so we had to actually add some numbers. What is this suggesting right now? The final cost savings as of March were $587,953. And so what this would suggest at this point in time is that we are in our contingency as of $211,067. Having said that, this isn't taking into account, I'll go over to the next slide, this isn't taking into account the full cost savings of what we may realize with grants that we're going after. And there's also cash allowances that exist within that budget. They may not fully be used. And so this isn't a secure full number. Not only that, I want to point out that still having a contingency of just over 1% doesn't sound great. However, we are building this building on land that's not retro, like we're not adding on, we're not doing renovations, we're not doing things like that, and we're above ground. And so there is some control really with council to be able to, our decisions being really the final factor as to how much of contingency we actually use. And so there is some control over that. There will be, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there won't be any unforeseen situations where the engineers have missed something. However, our approach will always be how can we mitigate those concerns and those misses and not spend contingency. And so with that, the next slide shows the Coaldale Strong campaign and its current status, because it will also affect those numbers as well. Those previous numbers in budget are anticipating a $2 million campaign. We are at $1,047,150, and that's without naming rights of the facility as of yet. That could be anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million, depending on a 10 to 20 year type contract. So we're pretty confident that that $2 million will be realized, and are actually confident that that number could grow certainly past the $2 million. All right. Well, I just wanted to point out, I think it's important that when doing an update like this, I wanted to also point out who our donors are up to this date. And that is the Perry family is one of the people that come forward and made a contribution. BMO Financial Group, the Casco family, Community Foundation of Lethbridge in Southwest Alberta, the Coaldale Community Wellness Association, the Coaldale and District Agricultural Society, Sean and Amy Hawes Family Foundations, Independent Crop Inputs, John and Lisa Habaners, and the Cap family, and an anonymous donor at this time, number one. I will tell you that within the next few weeks, there are going to be 2 large donations that are announced. They are included within that number that exists right now, that $1,047,150. But generally speaking, when you see these contributions, like you'll see in the next couple of weeks, we'll start to see a little bit more of a response from some people that are waiting. And we do have a number of people that we feel are going to contribute something that have not announced their contributions up to this point yet. Last but not least, we are going after grant funds, and I want to point out these are just the ones that are current, but we have the luxury of having 2 years of grant funding going towards this project before the end of this. And so right now the following grants and programs have been applied for already. The McCain Foundation. This was after conversation directly with the founder McCain's, and the likelihood that they're still at the table about a possibility of another donation, but she really encouraged us to go after this first and to see what we could get out of this. And really we have a strong application in there that we're hoping to hear back from soon, but for $200,000. Community Spaces, South Country Co-op Limited, $193,310. And this is specifically done on behalf of the Coaldale and District Soccer Association to go after the turf costs that exist. All right. And then the following grants and programs are also being worked on as we speak. The Large Community Facility Enhancement Program with the Government of Alberta. That one is for $300,000 for the indoor and outdoor play structures on behalf of the future daycare provider. We're working with them on that. And that's actually an example. The picture you see right there is actually an example, because we needed to get a quote in order to go after this. That's an example of a playground that will cost $308,000 for the interior that goes up and fits within the space we currently have. It's also designed in a way that it can be taken away from or added to. And so if we don't, per se, get that amount of money, we have the ability to take some slides out and some levels, but add them at a later time too. So there's some versatility in that. And then another grant is about enabling accessibility fund program. It's with the Government of Canada to cover change room design upgrades to improve accessibility. The local accessibility group has come to us and asked for us to look at those change rooms. We've worked with them on a redesign. We're still waiting to hear back what the cost will be on there, because there will be it is a change order. However, we're going after this grant to be able to cover those costs. So we're going to get those costs back, and then we're going to put them in within this grant. And if for some reason we don't get that grant, we'll have to work with council on whether that's a go or not. So yeah, and that's the end of my report. But if there's any questions, I'm here for.
Thank you, Russ. Are there any questions on any of the subject matter? I just have a question for our deputy mayor. This recreation center budget update, does this satisfy your quarterly updates that you were looking for? Okay. So that's a good format. And then we'll be seeing one for the Civic Square, I believe, next meeting. That's correct. Okay. You did an excellent presentation. There's no questions.
All right, well, thank you.
So I'm looking for someone that would sponsor the motion to receive the Recreation and Community Services presentation as information. Councillor Saylor. Any further discussion? Did you have a question, Councillor Chapman?
Just only one question on your recreation center budget update, and you mentioned in there that you're deleting the curb from the gravel park. Is that just more of a non-necessary thing? Is that?
Yeah, this time of so that's expansion gravel parking lot. The main parking lot is paved, and so this would be the one most west, and so it isn't getting paved, and so there's actually no requirement for there to be a curb. There will be the proper drainage and things, but the curb itself is a cost savings at this time. It also allows for us that once we have, having done this in the past, it's actually not a bad idea to wait on an expansion to figure out where people are going to park and where curbs should probably go, because you learn a lot from seeing how an expansion parking lot will be. And so I think it's actually the right idea regardless of cost savings.
Finally, just Mayor Van Ryan brought up an excellent point at the beginning of the berm presentation. Or following that, and I thought it's a relevant question, and I would just like to kind of keep a pulse on that question about trash or garbage blowing debris, after after everything's all done, how things blow around, and I would just like to see some effort put into some form of mitigation about debris in the future, and whether we have to budget for a fence or something that will help stop the garbage, because I'm really concerned about garbage blowing over as far into the birds of prey wetlands is really a concern of mine as well. So I would like to see some effort to be done there.
Yeah, duly noted. We will there. I mean, there's two ways to mitigate that. It's through supervision and through landscape. And so we'll certainly take that into account.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Councillor Saylor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Russ. Okay, we're going to move on to item 10.1, council and committee reports. We have Councillor Dale Pickering presenting this evening a verbal update on the South Grow Regional Initiative Committee.
Thank you, Member Van Ryan, and to council for letting me up for you on South Grow. South Grow is an economic development alliance of 30 South Central Alberta communities committed to working together and to achieve prosperity for the region. Representing over 130,000 people, South Grow is committed to assisting communities and organizations, businesses and people in the region to further their economic development goals to maintain a high quality of life. South Grow's goal is to accelerate and enhance economic development, sustainability for communities in the South Grow region. Just to give you a little background on South Grow, they were founded in 2004. They're non-profit run by a board. Their specialties are like economic development, agriculture, agri-food, broadband industry, trade, transportation, wind, solar energy, alternate energy, and they like to attract businesses and retain rural in the community. One of their biggest projects that just happened in 2021 was the broadband, to make sure all communities had 50-10, because a lot of small communities couldn't afford to have fiber optics brought in. So they went in turn and made sure that they finished the project. Out of 30 communities, I think there's only 2 left that don't. Another big project they were involved in was the Highway 3 Twinning Department. According to some information I had, that was in dire need of somebody backing them and pushing forward. And as I've heard from Peter us today, it sounds like that it's all a go. So it's a good sign. Another one they're really pushing is the agri-food corridor. They want to make Southern Alberta that it's a big deal now. They're working with the federal government on enhancing that. And some of the things they've done for Coaldale that you're probably familiar with is they've started and they worked with the Birds of Prey as one of their foundations. They worked in enhancing and getting us the e-charging station in Coaldale. And the biggest one, what's really exciting, is the 2.0. That is something that we can be really proud of. And one of the other things I'm looking forward to is we were approached to host the next AGM meeting on June 23rd. And I'm hoping we can have it at the Gem of the West. So, any questions?
Any questions for Councillor Pickering? Excellent report, Dale. Good job.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan.
Okay, moving on to correspondence. Item 11.1, the Alberta Utilities Commission. We received a letter from the town of Fox Creek that they were asking for the town of Coaldale's support by sending a letter to the Alberta Utilities Commission. And I'm not going to read the letter, I'll just read one paragraph. Basically says that the town of Coaldale joins in the increasing concern across the province regarding the rising utility fees for both natural gas and electricity. This concern is being felt throughout the public and private spheres, and we urge the Commission to take a serious note of the concerns herein. And it lists all the concerns regarding power and natural gas. So this was a letter that was drafted by Fox Creek, and basically it's a templated letter that we just put in our community's name and under our signature. And we would like to send this to the Alberta Utilities Commission. So council saw the letter previously, so I'm looking for someone to make a motion that we send this letter, and we can get our municipal clerk to get that off in the next day or two. Councillor Reese will make that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And that takes us into the closed meeting portion. So at 7:53 p.m. that council move into closed session in accordance with section 197-2 of the Municipal Government Act to discuss matters exempt from disclosure for item 13.1, subject to FOIP section 16, third party business interests, Item 13.2, subject to FOIP Section 17, third-party personal privacy, and Section 21, intergovernment relationships. Can I get someone to sponsor that motion, please? Councillor Beekman, any discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, and we'll take a 10-minute break, please.